is Jereme Bivins. So Jereme is the managing director, I believe, or partner at Good Dog Strategies. I actually met Jereme also around 10 years ago, so similar to Don. I met him at some, I don't know, meetup event or whatever, or some conference. And I've worked with Jereme for quite a while. So I know that he really knows what he's talking about. He's worked at the Foundation Center. He's worked at the Rockefeller Foundation. We work together on a lot of capacity building stuff. And currently right now, Jereme and I are board members of a nonprofit called N10. N10, they do capacity building for nonprofits. And they have this annual conference called NTC, the Nonprofit Technology Conference. Next year, it's in Baltimore. It's one of the best conferences I've been to as well. I can't say that about every conference. And if you're looking to really deep dive in over a few days in Baltimore next year, check them out, n10.org. Well, Jereme, you're an amazing storyteller. You're great at everything you do when it comes to digital storytelling. I just really want to hand it off to you to kind of kick things off.
All right. Well, thank you for the kind intro, Rob. I will throw up my screen here and dive right in. All right. As Rob said, I'm Jereme Bivins. I'm Managing Director of Good Dog Strategies, formerly of the Rockefeller Foundation and a handful of other places. Good Dog is actually only a few months old, so it's more puppy than dog at this point. So some of the experiences I'll be drawing on for this presentation are from my time at Rockefeller. Some of them are work with clients. So I'll jump right in, and if you want to learn more about Good Dog and myself, you can jump over to the website, gooddogstrategies.com. Okay, so what is a story? A story is an account of imaginary or real people and events told for entertainment. In our case, it's for impact. And when you're looking for impact stories, there's no better place to look than the social sector. But no matter the sector that you're covering or the stories that you're looking for, they all have a few things in common. Stories are captivating, they're entertaining, they're inspiring, they're educating, and they can spur us to take action. I love this quote: "If history were taught in the form of stories, it would never be forgotten," because it's exceptionally true. We remember things that really touch us kind of at our core. Stories activate parts of our brain that otherwise lay dormant when we're reading something or we're listening to a presentation. So hearing a story puts more of our brain to work than just by listening to someone present. So where we want to start is actually at the start of our journey here. In 1949, a literature professor named Joseph Campbell published a book called The Hero with a Thousand Faces. In the book, he explored the similarities from myths and legends over the course of human history. He called the theory the monomyth, or the one myth, which sees all narratives as basic variations on a kind of a common theme. Campbell based his idea on patterns that he observed while studying myths and fables from around the world. So no matter where they were coming from, no matter who was telling a story, they all had this kind of general thing that he had identified. And the central pattern he observed, represented in this graphic here, is what he dubbed the hero's journey. So if you follow the arrows on the hero's journey, many of you might already know this or seen this graphic, you'll notice the path starts with our hero, of course. The hero is called to an adventure. He's usually received some sort of supernatural aid to push them, particularly in the case of myths and fables, push them across that early threshold. As soon as they get to that threshold, they're met with some sort of mentor. Usually it's an older person, somebody who's hardened or seasoned, and then they're joined by other friends who can aid them in very specific portions of their journey. When the hero reaches their crossroads, a turning point, there's a grand challenge, they must overcome that. And in overcoming that challenge, our hero's transformed into something and someone better than they were before. And because of that transformation, as we get over to the atonement area and the return, they're able to reconcile the challenge that they faced initially and move on. And so my version is obviously extremely oversimplified and extraordinarily dull. And if every story was told like I just told this, we'd probably have no good stories to share. But this is basically the basis of all storytelling. And so where do we see this concept manifest? Literally everywhere. This is a little known series called Star Wars. And there's a reason why when we go to the movies or we watch TV shows or read books, we think to ourselves, the storyline is so overdone. This Star Wars movie is basically a remake of the 4th episode. And in this series, for those who are unfamiliar with this timeless classic, it's a story of a young man who's frustrated by the rule of an evil empire and wishes he'd do more about it. He meets an old hermit who has supernatural powers as a Jedi Master. And after Luke's aunt and uncle are killed, he's called to become a Jedi himself. So he teams up with a band of rebels who are very good at very specific things. They fight the Empire. He confronts his own inner demons and ultimately wins the day with the help of his friends. And this one is cheating slightly because when George Lucas actually created the Star Wars franchise, he already knew of Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. So he did internalize that as part of the plot. But if you're not really a fan of sci-fi, we have fantasy. I think this one's all Tolkien. He didn't think about Joseph Campbell at all. And we consistently see this same setup from story arc to story arc, no matter the genre, no matter the time period, no matter the storyteller. And there's a winning formula here that doesn't just have to win you an Emmy. What if we could use the stories to win hearts and minds instead? So if you're here today, you probably already support the idea that storytelling is a compelling tool for inspiring action and change, and also for influencing thought leaders and decision makers. But in the digital world, the shape and delivery of stories has shifted dramatically. Traditional long-form articles now share the stage with tweets and messages of around 280 characters and images that disappear in seconds after they're opened. While there have never been more ways to reach audiences, it's also never been more difficult to actually reach them. You need a strategic approach to cut through the noise. And for that, your stories have to really stand out. So in any successful engagement strategy, quality stories are at the heart of it. I'm a believer that the social impact sector is better positioned than any other sector to use stories that really connect with the audience because they're told from real life. We're on the ground seeing these things in reality. And they're honest. Our stories are hopeful. They're brutal. They're funny. They're scary. They're the most human stories that you can collect. And we have the ability to shift the dynamics in the social sector by bringing the right people and these resources together. And that's why strategic storytelling is so important. So to combine the tools and resources you need to tell meaningful stories. Stories with purpose, they don't just materialize. You have to strategically plan them. They have to be creatively crafted. And then they have to be designed to achieve measurable outcomes. So enter the social impact story map. If we were to take the hero's journey and we apply it to social impact stories, we get this social impact story map. First, we have our status quo and first steps. What is life like right now? What are the challenges that we're currently seeing in this environment? Obstacles and outlines. How are we approaching those challenges? Who are the people that are working to break those obstacles? Who we team up with, our donors, our volunteers, other supporters. What's the breakthrough we need to see? Now that we've overcome this challenge, we have a peek into the other side. Then the impact and call to action. This is what happened as we crossed the threshold, as we beat that challenge. Here's how you can help us do it again, or do it bigger, or do it better. So you can see it's very similar to Campbell's idea, just boiled down, and obviously a lot more simple. So if you look at this in practice, let's take, for example, Humans of New York, which is a photo storytelling site known for its beautiful photographs, married to short blurbs and quotes from subjects. Since we're coming up on the 7th anniversary of Superstorm Sandy, which devastated New York and New Jersey in 2012, it left hundreds of thousands of people homeless and without power. And there's a phenomenal Huffington Post quote from November of that year, which I think really captures it. Captures the duality that many of us faced at that time, which is when Sandy hit New York City, it completely destroyed some neighborhoods just as it completely spared others. While Breezy Point was underwater and on fire, the Upper East Side could still watch Netflix. So Brandon Stanton, a photographer at the time who had just launched Humans of New York, decided to share the stories of individuals coming together in the aftermath of Sandy and raise money while doing it. So Stanton would show all sides of the story, not just the victims, but also the first responders, the volunteers, and the community that was helping them to recover. In Stanton's words, Hurricane Sandy revealed the power of nature as well as the power of humanity, and we wanted to document both. Through this crowdfunding campaign, fueled by photos and stories supported by the greater narrative of community resilience, Tumblr and Humans New York beat their goal of $100,000, and they raised nearly $320,000 over a 10-day period in November of 2012. And that's credible. And it follows a story map I just showed you almost to a T. The status quo, at that point, the photo and the stories that Stanton had were of people who lost their homes and their way of life because of Superstorm Sandy. The obstacles and allies, people afflicted by the storm needed supplies, they needed help cleaning up their homes, they needed a roof over their heads. Stanton showed those obstacles, those people, in addition to the faces and stories of community members who came out to help them and meet those needs. the breakthrough. The community's pulling together to help one another. It's not super difficult. It's easy to do, has a huge impact on our lives, and the impact and call to action. People's lives are slowly returning to normal, but they still need help. Stop binging Netflix on the Upper East Side. Donate your time and money. Which brings us up to the 5 pillars of digital storytelling. A few years back, when we started the digital storytelling project at the Rockefeller Foundation, we wanted to conduct some research on the state of storytelling in the social sector, which was prompted after a report was released by the World Bank, and then later popularized by the Washington Post, that discovered barely anybody was actually reading the World Bank's reports. Nearly 1/3 of their PDFs had never been downloaded. 40% of their reports had been downloaded fewer than 100 times, and only 13% had been downloaded more than 250 times in their lifetime. And since the World Bank's research purpose is to inform public debate and government policy, this data suggests that they might have been missing the mark. So we conducted our own research, and based on that research from nonprofits and NGOs, government staff, for-profit companies, we identified 5 major pillars for creating, promoting, and sustaining storytelling organizations. The first one, strategy. So we found that each social impact organization often dives into storytelling without articulating clear goals, understanding the interests and motivations of their target audience, understanding their audience at all, or without setting measurable goals. The second one was capacity. Effective storytelling organizations, everybody understands why stories are important to share and what makes a compelling strategic story. In addition, senior managers need to understand the importance of dedicating time, talent, and resources to strategic storytelling. Time, talent, and treasure, of course, being the 3 scarcest things at every organization. So very few organizations have dedicated storytelling team on staff, or the resources to hire an external consultant to consistently create content for the organization. The third one is content. In today's competitive media environment, only the most compelling content gets noticed and shared. And so stories for social impact must show people as active agents of change who play a central role in creating solutions to the problems that they face. Quality content and stories should be at the heart of our engagement strategy. Fourth is platform. While a large number of tools and platforms exist, social impact organizations struggle to understand which to use in order to really most effectively engage their core audience. And there's no one-size-fits-all solution. I think probably platforms like Hootsuite are probably a little bit to blame for this, because often when we talk about social media, somebody says, just put it all on every platform and just hit publish. And obviously that's not the right way to go, since every platform and every audience is different in the way they uptake information. So it means that you can't be everywhere all the time, and you want to use the right message on the right platform for the right audience. It's the reason why you probably won't find a ton of AARP content on TikTok, but good luck escaping it on Facebook. The last one is evaluation. Organizations that evaluate accurately the impact of their storytelling can learn what's working and strengthen their storytelling. And that feeds back into the other 4. Understanding how your content performs on which platform informs how much time, talent, and treasure you dedicate to creating it, and where you'll promote it. So let's start with strategy. Always keep your audience top of mind. Who are you talking to? Who are you trying to reach? How do they like to be spoken to? Should your tone be buttoned up and professional? Should you be a bit more casual? Is the audience moved more by statistics and numbers, or by faces and names? Maybe both. It's also okay if you have multiple audiences, but you want to be as specific as you can, so you can boil down the right message and the right call to action for the right audience. Remember, the general public is never an audience. If somebody tells you that we're trying to make this event or this message resonate with the general public, go back to formula, because the general public is just too big, it's too vague, you can't please everyone all the time, so you have to find your community and go from there. You want to weave data and information into your storytelling. So if you are doing surveys and you're collecting reports, think about how that works with the narrative of a person or an animal or whatever it is that you're covering. How can that data and information support your overall storytelling campaign? And what sorts of things are you going to need in the onset? Like, if you're putting together the strategy, what should you be thinking about creating or collecting over the year, over the month, over the week, whatever your strategy is really focused on? Think about what the big takeaway is. What do you want people to take action on? What do you want them to understand? Once you land on this, then you can worry about the content you want to produce. Don't start with content first. So both for the overall message and even at the individual piece of content level, I always ask, when my XYZ audience sees this, what do I want them to think? What do I want them to feel? And what do I want them to do? As I mentioned before, making someone feel something is really powerful. It's more than just informing them. It's compelling. It motivates them to act. And stories help us get there. It helps us kind of slip past the logical part of their brain to really make them feel something as they process information. So at the strategic level, your think, feel, do might relate to an overall campaign for your content strategy. For example, if your organization works to feed your communities hungry, you might set up a storytelling campaign that wants people to think the organization is an effective, reliable partner in our community for people in need, and for the beneficiaries that you are there and you have their back and you can feed them. You feel empathy for those who are affected by hunger and have a sense of trust and alignment with your mission, and do volunteer or contribute food or money to the cause. Get involved. Really understand the pain points of the people in the community and how you can help them. And the last piece of that was, what does success look like? How do you know you're achieving success? Is it more money raised or new donors acquired? Is it 1,000 hungry kids have access to free lunch in the summer? Tie your goals to your message's call to action. As you begin to set your strategy and start shifting to content, also consider who should be the storyteller. Should it always be your ED, or do you want staff or volunteers or beneficiaries to even play a role? So consider, does the person have credibility or authority with our target audience, trust of the organization and of the community? Do they have all the facts, and are they capable of answering questions or addressing issues should they come up? Do you want Steve Buscemi here spreading a youth activation campaign? Is he a credible authority with Generation Z and college life issues? Probably not. So remember to always consider the community norms and the ethics of storytelling when you choose your storyteller. These things might include, is this person giving me informed consent to use their story or their likeness in my materials? So if you're collecting a story from a beneficiary, make sure you understand how it's going to be used, and that there's not some level of coercion in collecting it, that it's not kind of a quid pro quo unless they really understand that. In hearing their story, what biases and preconceptions do you need to check before you retell it? We often come in to grab a story that we think is going to be very compelling and exactly what we need. But maybe the person that we're interviewing or the story that we're collecting isn't quite in line with that, and we don't want to change it to fit what we think we should be telling. We have to respect the person that's giving you that story and the storyteller on the other side who's going to kind of repeat it. And another thing which is critically important is in retelling a story, is there any potential harm to the person who gave you the story, to the person who's going to tell the story, or to a community of people that you represent? You want to keep that really top of mind, make sure that nobody's harmed in the work that you're trying to do. And these are only just a handful of ethical things to consider. We could probably do another hour-plus long session on the ethics of storytelling. So move into content. But your strategy shouldn't change very often. It's foundation, the core of your storytelling. So now you have to think about what the stories will look like, what they're going to feel like, what they're going to sound like. If you're regularly producing content, you should story bank it, even if it's just a Google sheet with a list of assets and types, some folders in a Dropbox account. Start putting together your content inventory, which should include things like photos from the field, which is a pretty easy one, quotes from people that you serve, videos of work being done, or maybe some behind the scene footage of stuff that's being done. It really gives a human face to your organization. And also when you're making video, make sure that you consider how you'll plan to use it across multiple media. If you think you're going to use a 5-minute long video on Twitter, for example, it's probably not going to fly, not just for technical reasons, but Twitter caps at 2 minutes, 20 seconds for native video. And as best you can, if you're creating video, you want to be native on as many platforms as you can. So what I'd suggest is saying, well, if this is going to be Twitter first, let's try to aim around 220, not just to mention audience attention span. Or work with your videographer or whoever's producing the content to say, if we're going to do a 5-minute video, are there natural points in creating this video where we could create 30-second snippets that can be used across social media? It can be used on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook or whatnot. It gives your content a little bit more of a shelf life as well. If you already have a bunch of content, which probably most of us do, you should figure out new ways to use it. So report photos can be used on social media. They can be used on your website. They can be used later for something else. So if you're paying somebody to produce a report, or you're producing it in-house, make sure that you have the rights to the photos and the graphics being produced, because they can be useful outside of a PDF report that you're producing. Turn statistics and pull quotes from your reports for tweets and Facebook image macros. Those are pretty easy to produce. So if you're going to you're going to have data and stuff like that from a report. You know, takes a few minutes to throw one together, pop it against an image. It's great for promoting a report. Upload all of your videos to YouTube or Vimeo, and then consider embedding the video not just on your announcement page or where you're producing your PDF or wherever you're going to be using this content, but think about where else on your site it might make sense as related content or something that adds to the value of the site section. And you can just quickly embed it there. Or as I mentioned before, maybe you can upload it and recut it into Twitter and Facebook to be there more natively. We need to start thinking about the types of content that we create because we're collecting more useful stories than we realize. So the narrative framework. This is similar to the story map that I showed you earlier, but this framework helps provide some structure and consistency for all the stories that your organization tells. So your stories, excuse me, should inform your audience about the problem, about the need. They should express why they should care about the cause, help them understand the solution. That's pretty critical. Give a sense of urgency around that solution, and then give them an opportunity to act. And if you do the first parts of that well, the call to action will just seem natural. They'll want to do it, and they'll be looking for a way to give or to volunteer, or to do whatever you're asking. So remember that stories shouldn't just be a path to a donation page or a volunteer sign-up form, but they should be actions that are considered opportunities for your audience to get involved because they care about the issue. All right, I love this photo. Because this is the Rockefeller Foundation staff way back in 1965. It's after work hours somewhat. It's actually during a blackout, if I remember correctly, for what the office was. And back then, we had a very different Rockefeller Foundation than you would see today. They typed up official memos on official typewriters, cutting edge technology back then. They released official press releases and newsletters, kept official journals chronicling experiences and progress through work and the people we interacted with. And we know all this because we have physical records. There's a paper trail that we can follow to learn about the foundation's history, study what the leaders were thinking at given periods of time, and we can see the impact over time. Now, nearly 55 years later, we've lost something really invaluable, and that's most of our organizations don't really keep records or consistent records like program officers used to back then all the time. They would document everybody they met with, they'd write little notes about them, sometimes very personal notes, and we can see that going back by day. Now the best we have is email, and oftentimes nobody wants to go back to their email. It's much shorter form, it's tougher to deal with. So we have to think about other ways that we can kind of capture stories from the field. So today we equip our teams with the most advanced storytelling equipment known to humankind. The smartphones enabled us to capture our work in ways that we never thought possible. It's likely that everyone here has one. In fact, I would be shocked if anybody doesn't, but they exist. You probably only think for your work capacity about the mail and calendar apps as the only useful work functions, but the ways that we capture and share our personal lives are equally valuable to the ways we can share stories from our professional lives, stories from our organization, stories about the people that we serve, the places that we've been, what we've seen and what we've done there. And mobile tech has come so far that even multi-billion-dollar brands are using smartphone images in their commercials. You don't need a huge operating budget, the latest and greatest computer, or even a fancy DSLR to be effective on-the-ground storyteller. And if you don't believe me, just Google Apple's latest ad campaign around the iPhone. There's an ad right now for the iPhone 11's video taking capabilities and photo taking capabilities. So it kind of reinforces this timeless mantra of the best camera is the one you have with you. And social and mobile has really turned us all into data hoarders. We capture our thoughts, our feelings, our likes, our check-ins, our sunsets, our selfies. And even now you can probably see tweets about today's conference if you go online. And these are all stories that are happening in real time. They're chronicling the now. It's just there's a ton of it. So in the history of storytelling, that's something that's really incredible. And what does that mean for us? It means we're too much information age. We've got to connect with our audience and find other ways in the world and be everywhere in the world at the same time, often from tweets and Facebook updates, from blog posts and Instagram. And not only can we do it, we do it all the time. We share everything. We share so much that apps have been created to turn baby pictures on Facebook into bacon and cat gifs. And because social media in particular is the great storyteller enabler, all of these things have come to manifest. So why not take advantage of the tools everyone's already using to collect and tell stories? So this is an example from somebody who worked at the foundation when I was there, a program officer who was at an event at a conference with a grantee. And so what I did was, he has a public feed. Don't look at your staff's private feeds. Don't be creeping on their private Instagram feeds. But his public feed actually showed some images from a conference that was there. So when I saw those pop up, I reached right out to him and said, hey, these would be really great to post on the brand account on Rockefeller's feeds. Can we cross-post these, or can we call attention and say, you know, Isel Karmali, who's a program officer here, is working, blah, 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 doing this thing. And when he said yes, you know, it gave us two things. One, it gave us content from the field, but two, it also elevated a different storyteller. Humanized the institution because you got to meet somebody who works, you know, behind the logo. And it also elevated the work of the grantees. You could actually see some of the things that they were working on and some of the things that they were thinking about. And this highlights a shift in thinking about stories. They're not just long form narratives anymore, which also means you're collecting a lot more content because of the short form. So once you've recruited your social media and your team's personal stories as your ally, what do you do with all the great content the partners are generating? Well, stories are timeless, good for us. The content that we produced yesterday, last month, last year, even decades ago, can still have meaning in helping us shape our narratives now. So when you're producing content, make sure that you're managing those assets, like I said before, in some sort of story bank, and that you're training staff on how to collect and use them later on. Having content at your fingertips means less hunting or creating new stuff. Which brings us to the 40-60 rule, which is basically, when you come to sit down and create your content, stop focusing all your time and attention on creating the perfect piece of content. Think about what you're writing, why you're writing it, who you're speaking to, where they find it, and what you want them to do. Think about the total package. Garth Moore, who was formerly the One Campaign, called this the 40-60 rule. Spend 40% of your time creating quality content, 60% of your time promoting it. Because time and resources are limited. If you find the right audience for your content, it's better than producing the most. As much as we love to talk about big numbers, if your blog post or report only reaches 5 people, if they're the right 5 people, that's pretty good. You've succeeded. So remember that perfect is the enemy of good. So instead of spending all of your time crafting the most viral video, start thinking about why you're creating it, who do you want to see it, what do you want them to do, and where should it go? Which brings us to platforms. Another key component for effective storytelling is the platform. Often we produce something like a report. Our first instinct is to throw it up on a website and unleash it on the world because they're all coming to download it. Except that the world doesn't come to your website and download your report, as the World Bank found out and told us all. So we do it anyway. So there's a lot that we can do with the valuable information that's locked inside those PDFs. So we have to be creative about how we unleash them. Think about where your target audience likes to hang out. And as much as you'd like it to be your donation page, think about the other pages besides your donation signups, and think about the different platforms that you can use to make that stuff pop. Most of you will have access to your website or your blog, seems natural. Some social media or email, really anything you can print or present at a conference, anything you can pass out or send. Think about all those different ways that you touch your audience. Those are all the best avenues for engagement, and we just need to deploy them at the right time to the right audience. So let's walk through how the 40-60 rule applies. Start by breaking it down. So take that report. What are all the different pieces that went into creating it? The photos and the diagrams. Again, make sure that you have the rights to use those however you see fit going forward. If somebody else produced them, make sure you get those right contract. Get the quotes and statistics. Take the individual stories of the interviews. How could those pieces be extracted and become useful on their own? For example, among the many ways that I take PDF reports apart for my clients, I also upload them to platforms like SlideShare, especially slides from webinars and presentations because they can accompany them quite nicely. By doing this, the files then easily embed on the website without forcing people to download it. They're dynamic, so you can see them on any platform. And SlideShare does a little bit of the marketing for me. They email people who viewed similar PDFs in the past, and they make the report more searchable through tags and indexing. Another way is in this publication that we produced, I broke it down. Each of these pieces told a story about different avenues of work that we were working on. Food security, domestic poverty, climate change, other things. We had the PDF that was created, plus printed publications that were created off of that as well. So what I did was I took each of those sections and created an individual blog post. So instead of having one report that says, here, download the report and read more, we had 8 individual blog posts, then had their own social media promotion attached to them. I had all of the graphics and content that came in stats, quotes, all that kind of stuff that I could also use for social promotion. So that turned that single report suddenly into just massive campaign content that I could use going forward, not just in the weeks that we were talking about this report and releasing this report, but in the months ahead whenever we wanted to talk about food security as part of our work. And it also made it so it wasn't just buried on our website. Email is often a forgotten channel for engagement, and typically when our organizations send an email, we rarely ask them to share or do something other than donate or volunteer. Give them something to do that's simple. So in this example, we launched a new program. I created just a quick image macro and then 2 buttons that were hard-coded for Facebook or Twitter sharing. And so when you press one of them, you would share that content. It's pretty seamless. And instead of emailing that press release and adding it to the master list, I purposely kept this barrier low. The amount of information explicitly was kept to the necessary and digestible. That was our only ask. And so our open rates, our click-through rates were much higher than we were if we just emailed the simple content. Evaluation. Your organizational goals tie directly to digital metrics that you can use to measure the efficacy of your storytelling efforts. So track progress over time with accurate, consistent, and quantifiable data to build the case for stronger storytelling, investment to senior management, more time and resources to do it better, that kind of thing. Pick things that are quantifiable, are useful in informing your strategy and tactics so you can adjust your approach as necessary, are meaningful to your team and your organization, which is kind of critical. If you started with your strategy way back when, make sure that the goals are actually aligning with what you want to do. Don't just pick vanity metrics. It's great if you want to increase social media followers, that's totally fine, but don't just have that be the metric, because feeling good about your social media presence and the number of followers is not super helpful to your mission. So figure out what you're actually trying to solve for and what you need to know if it's working. This is one of my favorite graphs. Also, I think it was by Garth Moore. So if you skimp on the marketing and outreach, the time you spend creating content for your site is only going to yield a slight bump in traffic, which you can see on that top line there is from Google Analytics. And this is what we call the snake eating the elephant. When you first launch a post, you get that spike, and then nobody reads it anymore. So volume doesn't matter again as much as the quality does. So pay attention to your Google Analytics, your Facebook Insights, Twitter Analytics, and other platforms. What pieces of content perform the best? For those pieces that are working well, is there a way that you can reshare them or cross-post them, farm them out to another website who might want to cross-post them, produce something like again? Maybe it's an issue with your promotion. Maybe you should rerun it and see if it spikes again. You essentially want to create a little bit more of a plateau than just a straight decline. Now, the last piece here is storytelling is also a tremendous opportunity for transparency. You can use it to show your donors exactly where their support is going and for what purpose. As you can see in this example from the Humans of New York campaign that I mentioned earlier, a full photo and a short caption really conveys the heart of what their campaign was trying to do. So things you can do right now: ask your team and your partners for content, 1 photo, 1 quote, 1 short phone shot video when they go out into the field. Build your story bank and train your team on how to use it. Stay up to date on new tools or platforms. There's a few of the resources I read. Lightful's blog is fantastic. M&R, their annual report is amazing. N10, as Rob mentioned, CauseVox's resource section is very populated with great stuff. Communications Network, HubSpot, and others. And then reuse your evergreen content. Once you produce something, it's not old necessarily and can go away. You can reuse it and find a new way to spruce it up. Some quick tools you can use. Storytelling for Good, which is a suite of tools and resources to help you tell better stories. It's based on the original concept of Hatch for Good, which is the storytelling platform. It's now run by the Communications Network. Tons of great content. Go check it out. IFT and Zapier help you connect apps together that ordinarily don't go together. So for example, I've used it to connect Google Forms with MailChimp so we could collect different data and port them over. Or when I save a specific pocket, or a read it later app, I save the article, it automatically populates in spreadsheet. This has been great if you want to keep a running list to be published on your site and so forth. Tons of different combinations, check it out. Google Photos has a G Suite version, so you can actually use this as your digital asset manager, your photo manager. If you go over there and take a look, make sure that you ask your Google admin to add you and activate the Google Photos account for the team, because then you can collect photos together and utilize Google's robust algorithm to do metadata targeting in the back end. Just beware that Google does compress files if they're over a certain size, DSLR caliber and above. No worries on smartphones typically, but just something to be aware of. And then you'll have searchable images. I'm going to skip this one because I know we're running out of time here and jump to Canva, which is for those who don't Photoshop. If you're not familiar with Canva, it's a phenomenal tool. The free version is very robust. You can make quick images and graphics. They have great templates for social media, and their free tool is really robust. But if you're a 501c3, you can also get their paid version for free as well. So check out the bottom link there if you want to get Canva for free. And with that, I turn it back to Rob for questions.
Jeremy, thanks so much for the presentation. I think we only have time for maybe one or two questions. So the first one is that, with this digital storytelling, like, how do you tie it to fundraising, or what are some of your recommendations or advice on tying storytelling to raising funds?
I mean, fundraising itself is often relationship building and storytelling. So any of the stories that you're collecting should be kind of thinking back to that impact story map. What is the problem that you're trying to solve? How does your organization play the role in solving it? And what do you need to do that? So it's beyond just saying, you're a fan of our organization, give us money. It's, we're doing this thing, we're helping all of these people. Doing that costs money. Your gift of X number of dollars does do X, Y, and Z for this person. Mm-hmm. That's been a very effective strategy for a lot of organizations for a long time.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because, historically, when it comes to fundraising, it's done in a certain way, like major gifts, grants, etc. And with digital storytelling, it's a little bit more like digital marketing, where you have lots of content, you have distribution channels, you have different ways to craft stories, different mediums. So it's a little bit different, with digital fundraising, a lot of it's tied to digital marketing and how you can really craft those stories, as you mentioned with that story map. So very, very cool. Another question that we have is any kind of recommendations for tools for content banks? Like if you're creating a lot of content, having like a lot of staff members do that, how can you best store and organize it?
Yeah, and that's a huge question, because there are a ton of digital asset management systems, DAMs, that you can get out there. They're really expensive. They can be kind of clunky, and a big part of any tech deployment relies on the staff to actually maintain it and other people. So I say if you're low on budget, then you should look at your processes, and you can use a collection of tools to help with that. So Google Sheets is actually a pretty simple way to go, because you can do things like, write down just a couple of snippets of information that you want, and then add a link to one of the rows or columns in the sheet that goes to the file on Dropbox or on Google Drive. And like I mentioned before, you can do the same with photos, but you could also use something like Google Photos to do it, or pay for a more Drive space or more Dropbox space and store your photos there as well.
Great. Well, Jeremy, I think we're all out of time today. Thank you so much for your time and sharing your insights into digital storytelling. Now, if someone wants to get a little more info about your expertise or has questions, what's the best way for them to contact you today?
You can visit gooddogstrategies.com and you can contact me there, or you can find me on Twitter at @Bivins.
Great. So, Jeremy, do me a favor, after you kind of get off on the presentation, feel free to kind of chat those into the chat box so that people can click on it or copy and paste it directly. Jeremy, thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, so I want to turn our attention, we're going to have a short 5-minute session with Christina Campbell from Independent Sector. Hey, Christina, are you there?
Yes, hello.
Hey, Christina, so to our Digital Fundraising Summit folks, one of our partners for the summit is Independent Sector. I just wanted to give Christina about 5 to 7 minutes just to chat about what Independent Sector is, how other nonprofits can get tied into it, as well as the Upswell conference. Christina?
Sure, yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be with you all and let you know a little bit more about Independent Sector, but especially our event coming up in November in Chicago called Upswell. So Upswell is our annual gathering. It's a 3-day experience that brings together thousands of change makers just like you guys from across the country, nonprofits, foundations, corporations, social enterprises, community organizations, the government. Everybody comes to this event, and we're really excited. It's the idea that we all have to come together to do big things and solve big problems in our world and make sure that all people in the United States thrive. And so we're coming together in November. It'll be in Chicago. We don't call it a conference because a couple years ago we sort of threw out the way that we did our conference and we started from the ground up. And so we are really excited to do things really differently. We're going to have workshops, quick talks, brainstorming events. We have science and tech demonstrations, big name speakers, musical performances, art installations, community immersion experiences, the list goes on and on and on. And the power of independent sector, sort of bringing this, this group together, is we've historically been the one organization that has always represented grant makers and grant seekers. And so we're just expanding that tent with Upswell and really making sure that change makers like you feel like they have a place. And one of the really unique parts of Upswell is that we make sure that the work of the local community is really highlighted in this national event. So Chicago is a really huge part of the event because we will be there, and it's been the folks in Chicago have been really instrumental in making sure that the content is where it is. And so we're connecting with you all at CauseVox. The obvious connection is that you guys are doing a virtual conference where you're bringing folks together to learn new things and to connect with one another. And Upswell is sort of just another example of us all doing that together. And so in addition to technology and data being a core component of our content, we also have sessions and content on capacity building, fundraising, things like racial equity. So it all happens in Chicago, November 13th through 15th, and you can visit upswell.org to learn more, to register, and we hope to see you there.
Great. Christina, thanks so much for just joining us.
Thank you.
Minutes. I have upswell.org on the screen share. I'll leave it up just for a few seconds. And then Christina, if you do me a favor, just include a link in the chat so that our folks can see it. They can learn a little bit more. And if you want to, you can leave a little more ways that people can learn about independent sector as well as Upswell.
Great, will do. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So we have blown through so many sessions right now that it is crazy. So I just want to kind of go through some logistics as some people are joining us right now. Let me share my screen real fast. All right, so where are we on this? Nope. Okay, so for all of you, again, you have tons of discounts that I'll send to you via email. I've also sent the rest of the summit programming schedule via email to you. So next up at 12:30 in just a few minutes, we're gonna go through some Google Ad grants. We're gonna talk about some donor retention, some secrets of the second gift with Steven. I see Steven on, he's amazing. And we're gonna actually hear from two nonprofits, Velo City Foundation, as well as the Postpartum Support International in just a few minutes. So those are our next sessions here. I want to point out a few additional things too, that this conference, this summit is hosted by CauseVox. We are a digital fundraising platform for nonprofits. So what that means is as you're doing your digital storytelling, as you're doing your social media, you can use CauseVox to direct all your folks and raise more with less effort to one of our donation pages, one of our campaign sites, or even just to do peer-to-peer fundraising. So you can do all of that through CauseVox very easily. Check us out, causevox.com. I want to thank some of our sponsors here, Harbor Compliance, as well as Joe Goresh Fundraising, as well as give big thanks to all of our speakers today. They're amazing. They have tons of expertise that I normally just don't hear every single day. So I think this is amazing for us just to sit on a Friday in a comfort of our living room or our offices, just to gather some additional insights. We do have a few additional things I want to share too, is that we are doing notes and recordings. So if you can't make it to the whole summit, you can always purchase our notes and recordings package. It's 25 bucks, and it gives you full access to all the notes that our education team is actually handwriting right now as each session is going on. And you can share this with your colleagues. You share those videos and recordings with your colleagues as well, so that you can view it for a whole year. Other thing too is if you want to take your fundraising from 0 to 10,000 within 30 days, we have a digital fundraising course for you. So you can sign up for a digital fundraising course. We'll paste the link in the chat box so you can learn a little bit more about this hands-on experience with the CauseVox team in order to take your fundraising to the next level for fall and year end. So those are the logistics items. I want to just break for about 2 minutes so that for some of you folks that have been with us this morning, you can take a quick break, maybe grab some lunch if you're on the East Coast, grab some coffee, or if you're joining us from the West Coast, maybe you can get a little bit comfortable so we can dive into our next session. Next up will be Candace. She'll be kind of, she's my co-host, and she will be hosting the next few sessions, but I will be back this afternoon. So for those of you folks that don't like me, then it's a good break. For folks that do like me, I will be back if you stay on. So we're gonna break for just a minute or two, and then Candace will be on to kick off a series of next sessions. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Rob. Doing a great job hosting. I'll give you a break for a little while here. Take over the wheel for a bit. So yeah, lots of amazing things coming up next. And so I'll let you guys take, a couple minutes, regroup, maybe grab a cup of coffee, and then we'll get started with Grant. He's already on, and he'll be sharing so much more about managing the Google Ad Grant. Also, during this time, we would love to hear from you. For those of you just joining, tell us where you're from. What organization are you with? And let us know what you're hoping to learn from the rest of today's session. All right, I know we're turning